Hi, it's Megan. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 5 family dinners that I've been making over the last couple of weeks. My family is only a family of 4, me, my husband, my 7-year-old, and my 4-year-old. So it takes me, a couple of weeks to actually fully cook 4 or 5 full meals. But this is definitely a very easy meal plan that you guys can make over the next couple of weeks. It makes really good dinners, and most of the recipes also have a good freezer meal variation of either you can cook the meal and then freeze part of it, or you can just prepare 2 at the same time. So the dinners that I made were Philly cheesesteak sandwiches, chili, udon noodles, angel chicken, and sweet and sour meatballs, or rainbow dinner as my kids like to call it. So let's turn the camera around and I'll show you all the recipes. Okay, so here I'm going to be making some Philly cheesesteak slider hoagie things for dinner tonight. So I'm going to get it in the crock pot this morning. So first you're going to need a 3 to 4 pound beef roast. I'm using a bottom roast. You can also use a chuck roast. To that I'm going to add 2 sliced onions. Oh, I'm also going to season the meat with some onion powder, salt and pepper. And then I'm going to add in the onions, add in 1 cup of water, and the equivalent of 1 packet of onion soup mix. Since I just have the dry mix here, I'm going to use probably 2 to 3 tablespoons. And then we'll just cook that on low pretty much all day. And then once this is cooked, I'll shred it. And after I shred it, I'll pop it back in the crock pot to keep warm. While I'm doing that, I will saute 2 bell peppers. I'm going to use some that I already have sliced. And then from there, we're going to put the shredded meat and some peppers on top of a hoagie roll. Top that with some provolone cheese, and then we'll just toast it in the oven for a little bit before we eat them for dinner. So this makes really good freezer meal. You can just freeze any leftovers and just reheats really well. You can also repurpose the meat for other things as well. Okay, so for tonight's dinner, I'm going to be making chili. It's our first rainy, cold, fall-like day today, so I'm super excited that this worked out with my meal plan. I'm also going to be making a slightly larger batch because I'm taking dinner to one of my friends who's about to have a baby, as well as some missionaries from our church, so that they can have an easy dinner. So I will leave the recipe down for just my regular recipe, and when I'm telling you ingredients, I'll tell you the standard amounts just for a regular recipe. So I started off with, in here, I put in 2 pounds of ground beef and a really large onion. If you're just making a regular version, you just need 1 pound of ground beef and a medium onion. And then for a regular recipe, you're also going to add 1 teaspoon of sugar, 3 cloves of garlic. You can put this in when you're browning the meat. I just forgot to, so I'll just add it now. 2 teaspoons of cocoa powder. You're going to need 2 14-ounce cans of petite diced tomatoes with green chilies. I don't have any with green chilies right now, but I do have some frozen green chilies, so I'm just going to add these in replacement of those basically Rotel cans. For the original recipe, you're also going to need 3 8-ounce cans of tomato sauce. So I have I'm going to add 2 15-ounce cans for my recipe today. The original recipe also calls for 1 can of dark kidney beans and 1 can of light kidney beans. I don't have any extra beans right now, so I'm just going to add the regular amount for that. You also need half a cup of beef bouillon. I'm just going to add a cup today and use one of these bouillon cubes. And then for seasonings, you're going to need paprika, cumin, coriander, that's hard to see, chili powder, and then salt and pepper to taste as you like. So basically, after you brown the meat, all you're going to do is just throw all the ingredients in there, stir it around, cook it on low all day, and then it'll be ready at the end of the day. So this recipe definitely makes a lot of chili. I was using my 8-quart crock pot, I believe is how big this one is, and it definitely filled it all the way up to the top, doing a 1.5 times the recipe. So definitely you'll want a bigger crock pot to make this, and it made enough for my family for 2 nights, as well as 2 quarts that I gave to my friend who was pregnant, as well as another quart that I gave to the missionaries from our church. So it definitely makes a lot. It also freezes really well. So if you guys get sick of eating it or you can't finish it, it also makes really good leftovers. So I just freeze it in either my super cubes, or you can also freeze it in freezer deli containers, and they thaw and reheat beautifully and taste exactly the same. If anything, they taste better because the flavors have melted better. Okay, so tonight for dinner, we're going to be having the udon noodle kit that I got from Costco that I talked about in my fridge clean out. And then So I'm going to make that up for my family. And then on top of that, we're just going to have some of these just bare chicken chunks. And then I'll have some different sauces that people can put on top if they want to. We'll also serve it with some grapes or bell peppers or kind of whatever fresh fruit people want. So this dinner was a hit for everybody. So if you ever see those udon noodle kits from Costco, they are definitely a very good, easy, yummy thing to have on hand. We just served it with some of that orange sauce. Okay, here's everything that you need for angel chicken. You're going to start with 2 chicken breasts. You can also use chicken thighs if you'd rather. And you're going to add those to the crock pot. And then you're going to make the sauce to add on top. For that, you're going to need a half cup of water with just a little dash of lemon juice. You're going to need a packet of Italian dressing mix. I just have homemade, so I usually use about 2 to 3 tablespoons. You're going to need a can of cream of celery soup. You can also use cream of chicken if you don't have cream of celery on hand. You need a 1/4 cup of butter and a block of cream cheese. So you're going to put that all in the crock pot, let it cook on low for 7 to 8 hours or high for 4 to 5. And then you can serve it after that's all done. You will take out the chicken, shred it, mix it all up with your sauce, and then you can serve it over pasta or rice. We're going to use angel hair pasta tonight. So here, like I said, I just have my chicken breasts in the crock pot. Again, this is another meal that can be scaled up or down pretty easily. This does make a lot of sauce, so you can use up to 6 breasts if you want to. My family, just 2 chicken breasts is plenty for us. So I just added my water with the lemon juice, the butter, a can of the cream of celery soup, and then I'm going to add my Italian dressing seasoning mix. Again, like I said, I just have a homemade version, and so I just sprinkled in 2 tablespoons of that. And then I'm going to add my block of cream cheese on top, and then I'll just cook that on low, again, for about 8 hours or high for 4 to 5. I believe I cooked it on high this day because I started it a little bit later in the day. So my chicken wasn't quite as tender. It was definitely cooked, but I had to cut up my chicken breasts into chunks instead of shredding it, which is totally fine. So I started cutting the chicken breasts, and then I realized that I was going to want it to put it back in my sauce, but it wasn't quite mixed together very well. So I started stirring it with a spoon, and then I got out my whisk instead, and I just really wanted to whisk it to make sure that the cream cheese was incorporated and fully melted so that the sauce was nice and smooth. Then I finished chopping up my chicken and just dumped it in there. Again, if you cook it for longer, it's more easily shreddable. So if you like a shredded chicken, you can also shred it as well. But today I just decided to chop it. And then, like I said, we like to serve this over pasta. My husband prefers it over rice, and we usually serve it with salad or breadsticks. And it's just a really fast, easy pasta meal that my whole family really enjoys. And like I said earlier, again, it scales up and down really easily. It can make a lot, and so it makes really, really good leftovers. The flavors develop really good the longer it sits, and makes really excellent, flavorful leftovers. Okay, here's what you need to make sweet and sour meatballs, or rainbow dinner, as my kids call it. You're going to need 2 to 2.5 pounds of frozen meatballs. You're going to need 3 bell peppers. Today I'm doing red, yellow, and orange. You're also going to need about 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, possibly a little bit more at the end. You'll also need a can of drained pineapple chunks, an onion, and then some kind of sweet and sour sauce. You can either use a bottled sauce, or I will share the recipe that I use for my homemade sweet and sour sauce, which needs vinegar, soy sauce, garlic powder, sugar, and ketchup, which I forgot to grab. So I'll grab that in a second and show you kind of how to put this all together. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is put 2.5 pounds of meatballs just in the bottom of my slow cooker. Okay, and then on top of that, I'm going to add all of my chopped veggies and my pineapple. Since these are going to be cooking in the crock pot for a while, I kind of like to leave these to be a little bit bigger chunks than if I was putting them in another recipe. So kind of about this size. Okay, and then I'll just pour the pineapple up on top. I'm just going to sprinkle that on top. And then you're going to cover it in your sweet and sour sauce. So this is the sweet and sour sauce that I have just bottled, but I have time today, so I'm going to just make my own sauce. I'm going to start off with 1 cup of vinegar and a 1/2 cup of ketchup. Okay, and then we need 1.5 cups of sugar. And then you need 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Then you just need to whisk it all together and pour it over your crock pot. And then you're just gonna plug it in, cook it on low for 6 to 7 hours, and then you can serve it over rice. You can top with sesame seeds, green onions, whatever you want to top it with. Okay, this meal also makes a really good and simple freezer meal. So since I have enough ingredients, I'm just going to double it. So I have 1 in the crock pot for dinner tonight, and then I'm just going to put 1 in one of my freezer bags, stick it in the freezer for another night when we need another dinner. At this point, you can add your bottle of sweet and sour sauce, or if you make your own homemade, you can add that in here as well. I don't love freezing liquids in the freezer if I can avoid it, just because then it's less likely that there's a mess or a leak that's going to happen. So to make this super easy, this is all I'm going to put in my freezer bag. I'm just going to seal this up, stick it in the freezer. So then just to keep this super simple, I'm just going to keep a bottle of sweet and sour sauce just on my shelf, as well as a can of pineapple. And then when I go to put these into the crock pot, I'll empty the contents of my whole bag. I'll drain and add my pineapple chunks on top. And then I'll top all of that off with my bottled sweet and sour sauce. So that way I can get dinner in the crock pot in like less than 5 minutes and it will be ready to go. So this is definitely a winner for everyone in my family. It's a really bright, colorful, delicious meal that's really great to have in the freezer and easy. So that's everything that I made for my family for dinner over the last couple of weeks. I'll make sure to leave the recipes all down in the description box below if you would like to make any of them, as well as any instructions for how to make them freezer meals. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week with a new video. Bye.